This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Josh, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, it's nice to be with you today, Frank.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a subject I think is near and dear to both our hearts, certainly to a lot of our listeners, because many of them either are entrepreneurs or especially in today's startup ecosystem of innovation, a lot of new businesses are popping up almost seeming like mushrooms overnight in each of the verticals that we talk about, and as far as technology is concerned. But before we do that, because you have such an incredible story and an extensive background, both in corporate as well as advising a lot of entrepreneurs and then being in business yourself. Let's talk a little bit first about KMS. What's KMS all about?
Sure. KMS Technology is an Atlanta-based consulting firm. We have 600 resources located in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and about 20 folks here in the United States. And we partner with and work with software product companies around the United States and helping them more aggressively get their products to market. We've also built within KMS a incubation function where we identify different opportunities where we believe we can bring new businesses and new concepts to market either ourselves or in collaboration with others. One of those companies we've very successfully done that with is a company by the name of QA Symphony, where we're reinventing the test management software space for Agile development. We've been through a Series A and a Series B and now have over 300 customers there, and are very excited about that company as well.
Well, in a term that's used a lot lately, they seem to talk about pivoting as far as politics, and even as enterprise positioning is concerned. Let's pivot for a second and not talk so much about KMS, but talk about you and the philosophy that you have and the importance that you place on I guess, entrepreneurism in terms of not only the aspects of innovation and the idea of success and those kind of things, but also I think, I don't want to use the word noble because it almost sounds trite, but I think a seriously important perspective that has to do with how you conduct business and the way you approach the business that you do. But let's start with a fundamental I think that a lot of our listeners would be curious about, and that is, how did you know you were ready to start your own business?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I've either started or attempted to start my own business a few different times. And when I was 15, I started my own lawn mowing business, and there was a market opportunity I saw, and I seized it. Back when I was around 28, I'd been in the corporate world for quite some time, and I had an entrepreneurial itch. I had gotten engaged to a woman who was a massage therapist, and she kept encouraging me to get massages, but I always felt like they were too expensive and they weren't personalized enough. So I spent about a year studying that market, building out business models, interviewing people, et cetera, et cetera. And I was on the verge of signing a lease. And as I went through my due diligence time and time again, I just came to the conclusion at the last minute that I didn't understand that industry well enough, and that the models that I built and the due diligence that I had done exhibited to me that I didn't think I could hit a home run there. And then again, fast forward to 6 years ago, so around 2010, an old coworker of mine called me up, said, "Hey, do you want to start a business together?" And he wanted to do something similar to what we had done in the past in an old company that we had worked in together. So the way that I knew that this was the right business for me to go into was that he and I spent a tremendous amount of time, once again, I keep using the word models, but modeling out what are best case, worst case, average case scenarios for financials. How are we going to differentiate ourselves? How are we going to get our first couple customers? And fortunately, it was a business that I knew. It wasn't something that I thought that I'd end up doing the rest of my life, but it is something that I knew very well and took a lot of comfort in. And in doing all that due diligence, we felt comfortable with it and then moved forward.
Well, let's talk a little bit about now. I think a lot of us are dreamers and doers. I think a lot of times we hear a lot of that from an old-time cliche, but I think everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody would like to own their own business. I think in a lot of cases we have a tendency to look at people that do something really well and think it's simple. But the reality, as I think both of you know, I think Eastern philosophers say, is that the solution is simple. It's the implementation that gets a little crazy. I guess really what I'm talking about here is preparation. You know, when you start looking at something that you think you're good at doing, you have a passion for it or an interest in it, can you be prepared in terms of what you can expect as far as risk is concerned? I guess what I'm talking about here is show me the money. What about financial preparation?
Yeah, that's, it's interesting. I walk around Atlanta. I go to the Atlanta Technology Village. I go to Switch Yards, and generally what I see, I'm a 48-year-old guy, and generally I see a lot of younger folks in there starting these new businesses with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I think it's wonderful. When I started KMS along with my partner Vu, I was in a very different situation than a lot of these guys. I had 2 kids. I had just taken on a very large mortgage, and I had a lot of things that I had to deal with. Whereas a lot of these guys are, living with four friends in an apartment. They don't have much mortgage, and they can risk and fail. And all that's impacted is whether they're going to be eating pizza that week or something a little bit more expensive, right? So I had to go through a lot of emotional discussions with my wife and a lot of financial discussions with my wife. I had to look at what was our burn rate every month as a family in terms of how much money did we need to continue to live somewhat similar to the way we were living, because I didn't want my family to sacrifice too much, although we did obviously change some of our spending habits. And then I had to look at, with my partner Vu, what was our business model and what type of cash flow did we forecast within the business. And then through all that, we had to net out and say, how much could we afford to pay each other? Initially, very, very, very little. And over time, how would that evolve? And then what's the worst case and best case scenario? Unfortunately, early on, we took, you talked about Eastern philosophy. There's another philosopher that I think is very witty, a guy by the name of Mike Tyson, the boxer. Mm-hmm. And he says, Mike Tyson's quote is, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So you can plan all you want, but things happen, and you have to be prepared for that. And in our case, fortunately, we have a very solid business now that's just doing wonderfully. But early on, we had some big hiccups and big stumbles that were tough for us to deal with financially. But we were able to work through that. We took second mortgages out on our homes. We cut back on our spend and had to adjust the way we went to market, but it all ended up working out.
Well, talk a little bit now about, you were mentioning earlier about a younger mentality, being on a fast track, wanting to make things happen quick. I think there's even a pressure now with innovation under this, I guess, disruption phase that we seem to be in. Everything's got to be not just a new product or a new innovation. It's got to change an industry quickly, almost overnight. I guess where I'm headed here, knowing some of your background, and I found it curious that you chose an intentionally slow growth method when you were choosing your staff members. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question. And, I look at, we have a significant investment in this other company, QA Symphony, that we started. And that is all about speed to market. How quickly can we invest and grow that business? And we brought in outside investors, and everybody has a focus on, what is their return on investment. With KMS, Vu and I started KMS originally to be a lifestyle business for the two of us, and then ultimately to be a platform for spinning off software product companies. And we always said to ourselves with KMS, because it's a services, it's a consulting business, our product is our people, we don't sell software per se, that we were going to not take on any outside investment such that we didn't have to answer to other people with the pace of our growth. Mm-hmm. Because when you're a consulting business, as I said, your product's your people, and if you can't hire great people then you can't deliver great services to your customers. So early on, we had a tremendous amount of demand, and at times I had to go back to old friends or people who came to us through the network, whatever the case may be, and they said, hey, we want to start with you. And I said, no, we can't, simply because we don't feel like we can bring the talent on quickly enough in Vietnam. Vietnam is unlike India. There's an unlimited talent pool in India. That's not the case in Vietnam. There's more than enough for our 600-person company, but we were concerned with our sales and marketing strategy was our reputation. And if we had one failure, that would permeate the Atlanta community and the ISB community in general, and we couldn't afford that. So we were very focused on having stellar services and stellar relationships, and we've been fortunate that it's all worked out in that regard.
Well, we all have heard the cliche. I think it's a fact now, unfortunately, and that is 50% of small businesses fail. What do you think contributes to their downfall?
I think they get overly optimistic, and they don't think about worst case scenario. They don't understand the metrics and the financials associated with their business well enough. They don't have the value system that they should have, and they don't focus on the customer enough. Those are the failures that I see time and again.
Okay, so now looking at the concept of starting, being prepared, obviously pacing yourself. I think the model in terms of a slow, methodical approach has a measured response to it that gives you the time and the energy and obviously even the financial resources to take advantage of what needs to be done while sustaining a reasonable lifestyle, if you will. But how do you create a company culture when your employees are spread all over the world? I mean, I know that the business got to one point where you needed a physical space. So at some point, dealing with the worldwide expansiveness of your organization, and now obviously getting involved in a physical space, why?
Yeah, it's interesting. We in Vietnam, we have not had any issue whatsoever in creating a culture. We often kind of explain to people that if you were to walk in our offices in Vietnam, you'd feel like you were walking in Google Vietnam or Alphabet Vietnam. We've invested a tremendous amount because our business is all about the ability to be able to recruit and, just as important, retain great talent over there. So you go on our Facebook page, you'll just see the culture that permeates everything that we do there. In the U.S., it's been a little bit more difficult because we have a smaller number of people who are spread out all over the country. Most of them are working at client sites. So we've tried to leverage the culture that we've built in Vietnam and bring that to the United States. We've recently opened up an office where, quite honestly, it was a little bit of a bet in that we didn't know how many of our folks in the States would want to spend time in the office because they're traveling to their clients quite a bit. And what we found is, you go back to Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. We've had a great deal of success of just people coming back and being part of the company. The other thing that we decided to do this year is we joined the 1% pledge. Are you familiar with the 1% pledge, Frank?
No.
So Salesforce, Atlassian, and a couple other companies put together a program called the 1% pledge, and that's where they're asking technology companies to give back each year 1% of their employees' time, 1% of their employees' profits, and 1% of their equity to charities. And so KMS has made that pledge, and we're using that as a platform to give our people the opportunity to come together in many different ways to give back to the community, which we think will really help with our culture as well, this year and moving forward.
The subject is important, and it's extensive. I would say it has so many layers and tentacles. I'm going to ask you back again another time for us to even go into more detail. But as we close, let's talk about a couple of things that I think some of our listening audience would really want to know, and that is, what would you tell someone if they were to come to you, say, tomorrow, and they wanted to start their own business? And then what are the key personality traits that you look for when you're hiring someone?
So in terms of, what would I say to somebody? I'd say go for it, but proceed with caution. And then the third thing I would say is I'm here to help. And what I mean by that is if you think you have an idea, if you think you have a great idea, don't think you can't do it, but make sure you take your time and really going through a lot of due diligence and dotting your I's and crossing your T's and running your financial models, doing customer interviews, leveraging books like The Lean Startup to confirm you have something that's a real winner, and then go talk to mentors like myself and others and get their advice. I mean, I've talked with many people who had entrepreneurial ideas, where some of which I've been very supportive, but others I told them things, frankly, they didn't want to hear. That they had a bad idea, or they weren't considering all the different risks and barriers out there. And you have to be open-minded to listen to those things. And then your last question, what do I look for in an employee? I look for, I'm from Pittsburgh, which is a blue-collar city. I look for people that are willing to roll their sleeves up and work and aren't above anything. I look for just raw intelligence. I look for creativity and somebody who's a team player as well, that's going to fit in well and put the company and the team well ahead and above themselves.
I think we kind of skirted over a couple of thoughts in terms of philosophy, and I do think the Tyson one about punching the face is sort of like the reality that life happens and there's no two ways about it. But I do think there is a balance, a yin and a yang, not to get too corny about it, that says that, when another philosophy about when the teacher's ready, the student appears, and when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think it's a case that what you're saying is that you don't need to go it alone. There's a lot of players out there that know and understand and have experienced a lot of the things that you will have to do or may have to do if you can avoid it by having someone that has the knowledge and the trust and the experience that you offer at your place, Josh. I can't thank you enough for the way you approach the business and the kind of things that you're already doing, but especially thank you for taking time, and I know a busy schedule, to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
No, thank you, and I really enjoyed being with you today. Have a great day, okay?